Algo muy importante que nosotros como cristianos debemos aprender es la forma en que podemos tener buenas conversaciones y la forma en que podemos compartir nuestras convicciones. Y para esto lo mejor es tener una estrategia, es tener un plan ya trazado de antemano de cómo compartir lo que creemos y de cómo poder tener conversaciones efectivas. Entonces, ¿cuál sería ese plan que tú has desarrollado para poder hacer esto?
Let me start by saying why the game plan is so important. When Christians go to conferences or they read books or listen to podcasts, they're getting content, they're getting information. Very important. But how do you get the information that you learn into play in a conversation? So there's a missing bridge from the content to the conversation or from the scholarship to the relationship, okay? That's what the tactical game plan is meant to give you. A way of taking the information and getting it into play. Now, the game plan is built on asking questions. The reason why we use questions, simply put, is that questions keep you safe. If you are asking questions, you're not making statements. If you make statements, people can disagree with you. If you're asking questions, you are listening for the other person's information, okay? So the first step of the game plan is a really important one because it's the one that gets you going. When you're in a conversation with someone else who raises an issue, especially against Christianity, instead of trying to defend Christianity with the knowledge you have, you ask a question. And the first question is meant to gather information. The first thing you want to do in the game plan is gather information. In this case, information about their own challenge or concern. And I have a model question for that. And that question is, what do you mean by that? Or some variation, okay? And if somebody says, well, belief in God is irrational, I'm going to ask them some form of, what do you mean by that? I might just say, well, what do you mean it's irrational? Or how is believing in God irrational? What specifically is irrational about it? Now, I ask that question for a reason. One, I want to understand what their challenge is or what they mean by what they've said. But I also want them to understand it because many times people will offer a challenge and it's something they've heard other people say, and it sounded good to them, but they never really thought about it. And so when I ask them, well, tell me more, what exactly is the challenge? What actually is the issue, say, with being irrational to believe in God? They must be able to tell me something. Lots of times they don't because they've never thought about that. But if they do tell you, now you've got something more to work with, okay? Maybe they're giving you their point of view against Christianity. They might say, well, everything's relative, or there is no truth, or something like that. Well, I want to be more clear on what they mean. That's the first step, okay? What do you mean by that? Good. Now, when you get that information, you've got a clear idea of what they believe. The next step is another question to give a different kind of information. And that kind of information is why they believe what they believe, okay? If they say, well, the Bible, you can't trust the Bible, why not? Well, the Bible's been changed. What do you mean it's been changed? Okay, that's the first step. And they might say in the translations or the recopying something, I'd want them to tell me, whatever. But my second question is, okay, how do you know that it's been changed in a way that destroys the whole Bible? So I'm asking what they mean by that, but I'm also asking a second question. And the second question is, what are your reasons for thinking that's the case? Or how did you come to that conclusion? Okay, those are the first of 3 steps of the game plan. And those are really important. Notice one thing about those first 2 steps. They're both questions, and they're both just gathering information, okay? That means the Christian is not making statements about his own view, which means he has no way to be attacked. It's safe for him to do that. Also, since the Christian's asking the questions, the Christian isn't doing the most talking. It is the non-Christian, the challenger, the skeptic, who's doing the most talking. That's great. Let them talk. The more they talk, the more you learn about their view, and the more they have to think more carefully about their own view. And I promise you, Diego, it's amazing just asking those two questions. What do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? What are your reasons for that? It's amazing how often that will get a person thinking because they're not so clear on it. And it doesn't sound so good after they have to explain it a little bit more. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen a lot. What I mean by that is you can actually make positive progress by asking clarification questions like that about what they believe and why they believe it, even though you're not making a case for Christianity. I've seen it happen all the time. And and other people have told me about how that's happened in their own life. So that's the beginning. That's the core. That's the foundation. Anybody can get started doing that. You don't have to know apologetics, theology, philosophy. You just want to be a student of somebody else's view. You're showing an interest in that person, okay? Now, there is a third step, and it's more advanced. The third step is you're going to use questions to make a point. So the first one, you're just gathering information. Now you're going to make a point, but you're going to use questions to accomplish that. Maybe the point is you're going to help explain your point of view by using questions. Or maybe you've seen a weakness or a flaw in the other person's view. As they've explained it, you see, oh, there's a problem there. And now you're going to use questions to expose that problem. You're not going to say, oh, wait, that's not right. You got a problem there. That's just an accusation. I mean, it may be accurate, but it's not very shrewd, okay? It's not tactically sound. If you can find a way to expose the problem by asking a question, that's really powerful because you make a claim, a statement against them, they're going to fire back at you. But if you say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? Did you ever think about this? And then you ask a question about the point. Now they got to think about it. And it's hard for them to get out of the hole if you've asked the question properly about a flaw. For example, you can have an atheist who complains that the God of the Bible is immoral. Your God does evil things. And when you think about atheism, there's no God. So there's no one to make rules about what's right and wrong. There can't be a real right and wrong in atheism. There can be personal preferences. You could have your own right and wrong for you. Okay, that's called relativism. But there's no right or wrong governing everybody. But notice what the atheist said. The atheist said, your God does evil things. Now, I might draw them out with a couple of questions, but now I'm going to use Columbo number 3, and I'm going to ask another question. Where are you getting your moral standard that you're using to judge God by? Okay, I asked that question. It's a fair question because they are judging God by a moral standard. Where are you getting it? Okay, now the ball's in their court. And well, I don't know what they're going to say in any individual case, but I do know that there's no answer for that because they don't have a moral standard. If there is no God, then nobody's actions can be wrong in a real sense. You might not like them. Okay, so what? Who cares? Why should I care about what you like if there's no moral standard? Now, that's just one illustration of going the extra step with Columbo number 3, using a question to expose a weakness or a flaw, making that point. Okay. Now, of course, it's advanced because you have to know what the weakness or the flaw is. That's really key. If you don't know the weakness or flaw, you can't expose it. Okay. And that's why sometimes it takes more. Some of your learning and other things, books and conferences, podcasts, to be able to see that. But if you know the flaw, don't just point it out. Try to find a way to use a question to get there. And in the book Tactics, I give a number of examples of how that's done. I have a new book. It's not in Spanish, unfortunately, not yet, because it's just coming out in September. But it's called Street Smarts. And in Street Smarts, I expand on the third step of the Colombo game plan and give lots of examples about how to ask questions regarding atheism, regarding the abortion issue, regarding science and faith, regarding the person of Jesus, regarding gender and marriage and sex and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to learn here. But if you start out just with the first 2 baby steps, you gather information asking, what do you mean by that? And then you also try to find out the reasons for their believing by asking, how did you come to that conclusion? What are your reasons for that? You'll be amazed at how much progress you can make in a simple conversation. And that's the tactical game plan.